Hi, I'm Molly from Wild Olive, and I do a lot of embroidery, and a lot of times I use some type of stabilizer with whatever I'm stitching. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. There are multiple types of stabilizers, and we're going to talk about three types in this video. The first is an iron-on stabilizer. Another is a water-soluble stabilizer. This one will stick right onto your fabric. And then tearaway stabilizer is another type, but for this, we're not going to even tear it away. So those are the three types we're going to talk about. The main reason that you use stabilizer is for fabrics that stretch or distort, and it's to keep your fabric even and smooth and straight while you're stitching so that it doesn't stretch or bunch up when you finish your embroidery. But there's other reasons that you might use it, and we will talk about that as we go. So iron-on stabilizer is also known as interfacing. And so I usually use a featherweight interfacing, and it just helps, keep everything in place and smooths it out a little bit. When you go to use this, it will come with instructions. I usually buy this by the yard, but you can buy it in smaller packages. Most fabric stores will sell it, and you need to follow the instructions that come with your stabilizer. But generally that means that there's two sides to the stabilizer. One has these little dots that you can see and feel more, and the other side is smoother. You can still see the dots, but not as much. And you place it with the dot side down. That's the adhesive that's going to fuse. You place it down on your fabric. Usually you cover it with a damp press cloth. I often will just use a kitchen towel. And then instead of ironing, like moving the iron, you usually press and hold for a set amount of time to help fuse that on. Besides just adding more stability to my fabric, one of the reasons that I use fusible interfacing, or really other types of interfacing as well, but is if the fabric is very thin and you can see through it a lot, the stitches will show through from the back. Even if you're being really careful, sometimes you can see as you move from one area to another, or you can just see the size of the stitches. So adding an extra layer of material to the back of this helps with that. Some people just add another layer of fabric, but interfacing will work the same way, and it makes the fabric just a little bit more opaque. So that's a great reason to give fusible interfacing a try. Okay, one of my all-time favorite stabilizer materials is water soluble, and it has a sticky back. It peels and sticks off of these pages. Sulky makes it under the name Stick and Stitch, sometimes also called Sticky Solvy. It does come on rolls if you want to buy it by the yard, but it's very handy if you buy it on 8.5 by 11 sheets for my favorite use for this. Now, you can use this just like any other stabilizer, put it on the back of your fabric while you stitch, and then this stuff dissolves in water. It's pretty easy. That's a great way to use it if you want stabilizer while you stitch and then you don't want it afterwards. But the reason that I like it in these sheets is that you can take these, and they show you here, you can put this through your home printer and print patterns on them. And then you can just cut those individual patterns out and use those. Rather than using this to truly stabilize my fabric, I use this to get my pattern onto my fabric. However, on stretchy fabrics, this works a bit as well. In that case, you probably want to cut the edges a little bit larger so you've got a little bit more surface area. One of the benefits of this kind of material is it's great for getting a pattern onto darker fabric where it would be difficult to trace. Sometimes even in more awkward places where it would be harder to do an iron transfer. So you just take your printed pattern, peel it off the backing, stick it wherever you want it, and then you can just embroider through this stabilizer material. And when you're all done with the stitching, put it in some water to soak and it will dissolve. So this is far and away my favorite way to transfer a pattern because it's really just print and stick and then start stitching. So still works as a stabilizer in this case, but also it's a great way for a pattern to get onto your darker material, or really any material. Okay, now we're going to talk about this tearaway stabilizer. This is most commonly used in machine embroidery because often you need that stabilization when you are embroidering with a machine, but you don't want to leave it in place because especially on clothing, it would be very itchy. But we're going to use it for this. This is another piece of linen. It's beautiful color here. But if you see here, it very easily will go in different directions, and that's not ideal for stitching. So I'm going to smooth this out the best that I can. Get it fairly straight. You could starch this and iron it if you wanted to. We're just going to go with it being pretty close for this. All right, so I'm just going to peel this off. And stick it down onto the linen and smooth it out. This has a slightly papery surface, which is why you wouldn't want to be wearing this on the inside of your t-shirt or something. Okay, now this is, I can no longer stretch this out of shape, which is exactly what we wanted to see. All right. So now I'm just going to get my embroidery hoop, put this here, and press this over. Because it's stiffer, you may need to loosen your hoop a little bit more than you expect to get it on there well. You can hear the paper sounds a bit. All right. So now you can embroider through this. When you go to stitch with this, you can kind of hear it going through the paper. It does leave holes through that stabilizer, which if you were going to tear this away would be very helpful, but as long as it's on the back of your work anyway, it's not going to matter. So you would just be able to stitch through this. Then, all right, we're going to jump ahead. Depending on what you're going to do with your embroidery, you could still leave this as it is. It'll be a little bit stiff, or you can tear it away. Tearing it away from the actual work itself might be a little bit, you'll have to get in there and remove it as best as you can. But essentially this, this extra all around the edge, if you wanted to frame this in your hoop, you could just tear away what you don't need and then trim your fabric and gather it around to the back exactly as you would, but leave the rest of this stabilizer inside your hoop behind your embroidery. All right, so there you have 3 different types of stabilizer you can use in your embroidery, along with the ways that I like to use those types of stabilizer, and I hope you found that helpful. By the way, most of the products that I was showing in this came from Missouri Star Quilt Company. Thank you to them for providing those for me. You can save 20% on purchases of $50 or more if you use my link, which is right down there in the description. And they have all kinds of great things for embroidery and other types of sewing, so I hope you check those out. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.